Some people on one side tend to overthink entrepreneurship and business. On the other side, there are people who totally underestimate what it takes to start a business. Understanding human beings is the bedrock of business.
Do you think capital is the problem, or do you think it's an excuse?
In many instances, capital is just an excuse, and I'll give you a reason for this. The typical entrepreneur is hyper optimistic. Investors are not the polar opposite, but they are not hyper optimistic, they are realistic. And I'm very suspicious of businesses where the only way to be better than your competition is to reduce your price. Those businesses generally don't do well because that race is a race to the bottom. You got 100 naira today, I got 150, and then tomorrow you got 200. It's only the customers that are enjoying, but our businesses are suffering.
What's something you thought would be really unsuccessful but ended up successful?
That one is Airbnb.
Guys, join me and welcome the one and only JP Iwuoha. He calls himself, and I actually believe he is, the business activator. So welcome, Mr. JP Iwuoha. Can you please just introduce yourself to us briefly? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. My name is John Paul Iwuoha. I am a business activator. What that means is that I make it possible for people, I make it easier and faster for people to start and grow a business. I'm particularly focused on African entrepreneurs. Now, not entrepreneurs who are African, but anybody who is focused on the African market. I've been doing this now for more than a decade. I started my career in my first life. I was an engineer. I studied engineering. I made the pivot into business when I started working for PricewaterhouseCoopers. I got chartered as an accountant, ACCA UK. From there, I worked in business development in the oil and gas industry. But my first love has always been consulting. Now, when you call it consulting, it's quite, to me, it sounds technical. By my nature, I've gotten a compliment many times. People say I'm a teacher, that I explain things in very simple ways, the ways it can make sense, even if you are not a technical person in that space. So that's what I lean on. That's the value I bring to people. And the reason I believe very strongly and passionately with this is that I believe that anybody who has a business idea deserves both the right and the privilege to act on the idea and bring it to life. But unfortunately, many people are not equipped for it, and it is by design. Our education systems are designed for producing component labor. A component labor is somebody who can do a specific thing. You are plugged into a company and you earn a salary. And the business model for a salary is not something that particularly I've done it. It has its merits, but why it doesn't appeal to me is that you have one customer. The company you're working for is one customer. Anybody who is in business knows that it is bad for you to just have one customer, because the day you lose that customer, you're out of business. And that's what I see a job as. I did it for almost 10 years, right? So the unique perspective I bring here is that I've worked in corporates. I've done work for banks when I used to be in PwC. I have a very good understanding of how the corporate world works. The best minds in Nigeria work at corporates. The best people work in corporates. If I were not doing this, it would have been just easy to just snatch me and work for a big corporate organization because they have the money. That's why you don't see this kind of quality working for doing the kind of thing that I do. Because most of us, many of my peers are in corporate. You have to have an element of crazy, to take on this kind of risk and say you're doing it on your own, and then you're bringing this level of quality to. But I have not looked back, and I enjoy bringing dreams to life. So it's not just Nigerians. I have clients in tiny countries like the Gambia, all the way to Uganda, South Africa. I have one client in Somalia. I have clients who are in the diaspora. I have Nigerians. I'm very grateful to be born in the era of the internet, because what it means is that somebody like me I can position myself and present my value to the world and allow the market to decide. And whether those people who decide are Nigerians or they are Kenyans or they are Ugandans, the internet gives me a level playing field and helps me to bypass some middleman, some guy who would do me either a favor or the people they call big gods, right? Those kinds of things. So the internet just gives you a level playing field. So, like I said, to summarize the value that I bring, I make it easier and faster to start and grow businesses. And I'm hoping that going by the substance I will share during this podcast, people can judge for themselves that many of the things I bring to the table are not just valuable, but they are not things you need to wait for. You can actually start acting on them today to get results. Whether you have an idea, you want to start a business, you started a business, it is sluggish, you are stuck, you want to take it to the next level. You have a business that is doing well, but it's just in one location, and you're struggling with growth, not just on the customer side, but on the structure side, on the operational side. You cannot close your eyes and things will keep running in your business. Essentially, you're employed in your business. Those are the kinds of problems that I essentially solve. But my approach is to solve it through strategy. So going by many of the things I'm going to be talking about today, you see I'm big on strategy. If you can think critically about the problems you face in business, you can find a solution. The resource is not the problem. It is the strategy that will help you crack that problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. I'm very grateful. Uh, as we dive into the conversation today, if you've not liked, if you've not subscribed, please like, please subscribe. I'm sure you're going to get a lot from this episode today. I came across your work and it really blew me away that someone could be this passionate about entrepreneurship. Someone could love the act of building enterprises and is able to put it down in very simple language, in a way that will get people to come to understand and know exactly what they need to do. Because I mean, we're in a day and age of snake oil salesmen, but John Paul Iwuoha is someone that I believe brings it simply. He even gives you a playbook, and he even gets like, it's almost like, see, there's this opportunity, having a business plan for you to take and go and execute on it. And I can actually consult for you and show you how to go about it. And I see the energy he puts into it. So my goal was to just get someone like you to have a conversation with that would be able to deliver that much value, and I could and I must say, maybe, I don't know, I found out when I was doing my research, I found out you're an engineer too. I also studied engineering. So I
Interesting.
don't know if it's an engineer. I don't know if it's an engineering thing here
Wanting to
that
fix
makes people
problems, right?
love. Exactly, like that general passion to want to fix
True,
problems or to
true,
just
yeah.
build something or design something. I mean, I like the way you put
Exactly.
it though, wanting to fix problems. I never thought of it that way.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, what kind of engineering did you study?
Mechanical.
Oh, the worst of them. Like that shit is hard.
Yeah, mechanical, and I specialize in automotive. So the initial plan was to the initial plan was to go into aeronautics. You know, that was the
Okay.
initial dream. Yeah, that was the dream. But I guess you get to a certain point, you find that when you find that thing you've always been looking for, and then you just discover that maybe this is just not it. Maybe I want something else. Or I want something more. That's how. Yeah, I always dreamt of the day I would be addressed as engineer this, and by the time I graduated, I got to that point. I'm like, but I don't feel any different. I thought I would grow a new body part, but I'm still the same person, right? So
So you
yes.
just
Mhm.
you felt normal after you were done with the degree.
I felt normal, and all of a sudden, I felt like that same person that was writing jam to go into university again after final year. That was what it felt like. I was looking for, okay, what's the next challenge? Because okay, you're not an engineer. The next thing is go and practice and get the practical experience. But theoretical knowledge is gone. But business always stood at that point as something, as a black box. I always admired it from the outside, but I didn't know how it worked on the inside. All of those things were very strange to me. And in fact, if I roll this back, I discovered it in my second year, that thing called business.
Really?
That engine from that was the first time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So that was my first introduction to that thing called business that would generate money, create jobs, make you respected. In fact, one interesting thing that made me almost lose interest in the course I was studying, that even the engineers work for these business owners. That's what I found out. That
Yeah.
this thing I'm studying to become, I'll end up working for somebody who has formed a business. I'll just be one tiny screw in one big engine. And I wasn't comfortable with that. I wanted to know how the engine works, not just being a screw in the engine.
So would you say your engineering mind took you into business? Because I think I came across a study that said most of the top CEOs around the world are have an engineering background. Like most of the Fortune 500 CEOs that you have around the world actually do have an engineering background. Um, and I've been seeing a lot of engineers who are making like cross carpets into
Mm,
industries. So, do you think that was what set a foundation for you to actually um, be a business activator? You know, was that really something strong for you that made you now start this journey of business activation? Because I kind of feel like the engineering mind is very analytical.
true.
Obviously, there's problem solving there. There's an understanding of how the world works. You know, from
Mm,
material science um, to understanding fluid mechanics to understanding why the why things behave the way they do. You know, so what do you
mm.
think that played a role in driving that interest?
In fact, if I would build on your observation, I've noticed that engineers make up part of that group of like leaders in the business world. I also noticed another group, people who study philosophy, or some people from the humanities. And what that tells me is that,
Mm.
yeah, what that tells me is that there are basic elements. I don't think it's the engineering per se. I think it has to do with the personality, the kind of person who wants to study engineering has something in him or in her. And what I think that thing is curiosity, an endless curiosity, how things work, how to make things happen, why things are the way they are. You
Mm.
know, always you have a head that is always asking questions. So when I was a
Mm.
little kid, it manifested itself in me, you know, damaging my dad's electronics. How does the TV
Mm.
work? What is behind this TV? What's inside the radio? Is there a small person inside the radio that is talking? Maybe let me find out who that small person is. And then, you know, you're just so then I would get into a lot of trouble. My curiosity got me into a lot of trouble, you know, and then it followed me into school. One of the reasons, if I was very confused when it was time to study a degree, there was an option for
Okay.
medicine, there was an option for
Mm-hmm.
engineering, and the reason
Mm-hmm.
was I would what you call it. I think I just stumbled on the name recently. They call it a multipotentialite. So you look at this WAEC result, and it's like the one they call all A's. So you know there are some results you look at, you be like, ah, this person is a science person because he flops English
Yeah.
and literature, but he's very strong in physics and maths. You know he's an engineering person. And then
Mm.
there's somebody who does well in
Yes.
biology, chemistry. You know, oh, this for medicine. I wasn't like that. Everything was, I could easily have done anything. So in my mind, I was very confused. So
Mm.
the reason I studied mechanical was that it was because of the way one of my teachers sold it to me. My teacher sold mechanical engineering as the engineering that works anywhere, that any organization will need a mechanical engineer. They are the most versatile of
Mm.
engineers. So that was exactly what got me in there. Before then, I was the in thing there was petrochemical engineer. Go and study petrochemical, you know. But then he told me, mechanical, you can
Yes.
work anywhere. You can work in aviation. You can even work in the oil and gas industry. You can work in manufacturing. You can work anywhere. So that's what got me into mechanical. So I of course I achieved the degree I was looking for, and then I was like, okay, what next? And that was when business caught my attention. But then faith played a part because um, in university, I had two scholarships, the Chevron scholarship, the ExxonMobil scholarship. So in my mind, I was always thinking, I'm going to oil and gas industry. By the time I finished school, NYC, I couldn't even do my passing out parade in NYC because I remember that was when Mobil had their interview. So in my mind, I was always an oil industry guy. But while I was going through that process
Mm.
for the oil industry, I got an invitation from PwC. And then I was like, what is this place? I got digging, and then I found out, okay, they do professional services, they do consulting, they do accounting. The more I read about this company, the more I got fascinated because I knew nothing about that world. So as somebody who had already conquered engineering, I was still fascinated by how exactly does business work? How all these banks and all these CEOs, and how exactly do you get there? How is it possible that somebody travels
Mm.
and their business is still working? You know, because okay, my background is I come from a family of business people, but the nature of business is one where your guy is in the center commanding things. It's more like a general. That's what I was used to. So if your guy is not there, everybody just goes around playing around. But I saw a different kind of business where, you know, everybody just knew what to do. It was like a colony of bees. You know, everybody just
Mm.
had their own work cut out for them. So I got into PwC and I saw it as a waiting ground while the ExxonMobil thing panned out. I was still going through the interview process in ExxonMobil, and I was in training in PwC. Those 30 days in training
Really?
won me over. One, because I heard things they were very fascinating to me. So it was like, okay, interesting. Oh, accounting. Oh, this is the science of money. How you measure money, how you represent the money, and even the numbers actually tell you stuff. And you can imagine telling that to somebody who studied engineering, that the numbers actually talk to you. They're looking at these numbers, you can see that this is a sick business. And it's a sick business because of this. Look at the gross margins. They're making money here, but then they're not turning a profit. So the overhead is so much. So being able to tell stories from numbers, I'm like, oh, okay. The numbers I'm coming from will make machines work. I understand those numbers. The mechanics, the fluid mechanics, and the rest of them. But then this one was totally different. It was telling a different kind of story. So, but then fate played a fast one on me. By the time I got to the last level of interviews for ExxonMobil, I got that dreaded email that they are discontinuing the interview process, but that they will keep in touch with us over the next 2 years, blah, 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 blah. And then that's how my commitment to PwC went full blast. And then that took me into the track of becoming a chartered accountant. And I've never looked back. I'm still fascinated by business because unlike engineering, you cannot finish learning business. If you understand the laws of physics, the laws of physics are fixed. The law of gravity has been propounded more than 100 years ago. It hasn't changed, right? The boundaries of engineering are quite fixed. The nature of the problems may change, but we know where to get our solutions from. We know those laws of thermodynamics, the laws of gravity, all those laws. You apply them and you can solve the problem. So you are coming from a fixed framework to solve problems in a dynamic world. That's engineering. When it comes to business, the toolkit is dynamic because every business is different. You cannot just say apply this, plain vanilla and it's going to work for you. No. Every business is different. Every context is different. Every market is different. Every economy is different. Every day is different. If it's not interest rates rising, it's one calamity happening somewhere and you have to keep adapting. The risk profile is always changing. So you can imagine that for somebody like me, I'm on a treadmill because there's no limit to what you can learn. There's actually no limit to what you can learn. Every single day there's something coming up. And then knowing how to apply principles and frameworks has also helped me in business. Because I noticed that some problems can be, you can arrange them into formats that can help it make sense to a lay person. So I commonly get the feedback that I'm able to break things down into bits, things that are very complex. I'm able to break them down into bits. And I think that in itself is something that we take for granted because we are now at a time where business is so much important in our history. If you look at where our country is, you look at where we are as a race, right? The most impactful tool for empowerment and personal development right now is that the average person has a dream. They can work on that dream. They can build a business, employ other people, contribute to society, contribute to the economy. Employment doesn't offer you that. You might have first class. You might be the most intelligent person, but there are still gatekeepers. If nobody employs you, you cannot manifest your destiny. Business is not like that. Entrepreneurship is a level playing field. If you can play, just enter the field. You don't need to know anybody. You don't need to see nothing. You don't even need to write any CV. In fact, here, we don't even ask for CVs. We don't care about CVs. We care about what can you do. We care about results. And there's nothing more amazing, than that. So that's why it's still weird. Recently, we had our 22nd year anniversary with my classmates. We all studied engineering. Many of them are now like senior engineers, engineering, calling themselves engineer this, engineer this, engineer that. So it's a bit strange because I don't identify that way, but it's part of my history. I worked for the degree, I got it, I still have the knowledge, right? But I don't identify myself that way. Yes.
That's quite interesting, I must say. I think for me, actually, I solved for engineering by when I was trying to go to university. They said, what should I read, science or arts? They told me if I read science, I can always switch to art. But if I read art, I couldn't switch to science. And I said, okay, let me take the hard part so that as well, if I can solve for the hard part, solving for the other one is easier. So
Easy.
I now
Yeah.
went to read communications engineering. So I was a graduate of communication engineering, but I never practiced for a day. I think the bug of entrepreneurship also caught me early. That
Mm.
I don't know. Sometimes I ask myself, what am I really doing? But I mean, and I think that's what I love about entrepreneurship, like you mentioned. It's a level playing field. Put on your jersey. As a matter of fact, you don't even need to put on jersey itself. Just get on the field and then begin to
And
play,
play, yes.
for
Yeah.
survival. But
Then,
and you've been working for over a decade, helping African entrepreneurs navigate challenges. What have you seen that are particular hurdles, and particular challenges that either you've seen a lot of young African businesses keep making over and over again?
okay. So I think there is this delicate balance. What I mean by that delicate balance is some people on one side tend to overthink entrepreneurship and business. So they approach it more or less the way an engineer will approach something. They want to have like a business plan totally thought out. They want to have the full capital they will need to deploy, start this business and grow the business. They want to have the sites ready, the office ready, everything ready. So that when it's time to go, they just plug in and play. That's on one side. There are some people who
Hmm.
overthink business and entrepreneurship. On the other side, there are people who totally underestimate what it takes to start a business. They just say, oh, I have this $1 million idea. I'll just start the business. 1, 2, 3. By next week or next month, I'll start making 1 million. So they totally underestimate how difficult, how competitive the market is, how much critical thinking needs to go into it, and how complex human beings are. Because at the end of the day, when you are dealing with machines, whether they are mechanical machines, computers, you know what to expect because machines are largely predictable. With human beings, you don't know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
They are showing you one thing, but what they are going to do is totally different. And that is how they manifest as customers. That's how they manifest as investors. That's how they manifest as employees. That's how they manifest as suppliers, even our regulators. So one day they set up one rule, and the next day they tell you they've cancelled that law, that they are coming to demolish your place. So understanding human beings is the bedrock of business. And when you look at it that way, it will help you not to underestimate a human being, but it's also helpful not to overestimate what they can do. So I think that's the first major mistake that people make. So, but the consequences can be very devastating. On one hand, you have people who have brilliant business ideas, but they sit on those ideas for too long. And when you ask them, why have this idea is brilliant, why haven't you done anything about this idea? You hear all sorts of reasonable excuses. The top usually at the list is, I don't have the capital to deploy this thing. I don't have capital. Another person will say, I don't have time. Another person will tell you, I want to go and get this certification first. Then I'll get my master's and then I will not be capable enough to start the business. All sorts of excuses. That's what happens on one side. On the other hand, you find people who have been burned. They've tried different businesses. They've been burned. So whenever you tell them about business, they'll tell you, forget about it. It doesn't work. You need to have a godfather for business to work because I started this business and it failed. And then I started the other one and it failed. And I started the other one and it failed. So I've given up on business and entrepreneurship. It's just not for me. So it's a funny balance. There are people who underestimate it and there are people who overthink it.
So you say there are people who overthink it and there are people who go at it like fools. Is this
Exactly. You
so
summarized it well. You summarized it well. There are people who go at it like
so
fools and there are people who overthink it.
you mentioned something about the issue of capital
Yeah.
and people making excuses about capital, right?
Yes.
And everybody, I mean, most people I meet now and they tell me, well, I have this beautiful idea, but the only problem is that I don't have capital.
Yes.
And I understand capital is a factor, it's an input, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what do you see as like the biggest problem that a lot of entrepreneurs have when it comes to capital? Do you think capital is the problem, or do you think it's an excuse?
Yeah. In some instances, there is merit that, capital is the obstacle. In many instances, capital is just an excuse. And I'll give you a reason for this. When you listen to the person who tells you he wants to start an agribusiness, and you ask him about this agribusiness, and it involves buying, he wants to buy hectares of land and then start doing the business. And that's why he needs 50 million naira or 100 million naira. So even in that instance, you can clearly see that the person is not thinking properly about how to start that business. If you want to cultivate land, there is no requirement from the land that unless you own the land, I will not grow that anything you plant on me. What you need is access to the land, not ownership of the land. So that person who is saying, I need to buy 100 hectares, you don't need to buy 100 hectares. You just need to lease 100 hectares for the first 2 to 3 years and try the business and see whether it works. And then if it works, you can go ahead and extend the lease. If it doesn't work, you forget that business and move over to something else. But imagine if you buy 100 hectares of land in some village somewhere and you try that business and it's not working for you, guess what? You are stuck with 100 hectares that may not even develop in the next 20 years because of how inferior that place is. So when you think about it, capital is actually a strategy. It's not essentially a resource. There are people right now that don't have capital, but if they need to start a business of 50 million, they know where to get that money from. They have access to capital. They have access to people that have the money. So at the end of the day, it is strategy. You're also in a country right now where if you put your money in fixed deposit or savings account, in a bank savings account, you are getting 4 to 5% or even less. If you put it on the stock market, we don't know whether that one is going up or coming down. If you put it in Forex, you've seen what Forex has done to us in the past couple of months. It goes up, it comes down. So it's just going to be dealing with your blood pressure, that sort of thing. If you put it in real estate, you need to wait for quite some time for it to materialize. So the options for anybody who is earning money in Naira and wants to invest it in the Nigerian economy, they are quite limited. One of the best opportunities that exists now is private capital. If you can invest in somebody's business and that person is paying you a return, that's a beautiful opportunity. So when you think about your business that way, that you're an opportunity that other people are looking for. All these guys that have senior jobs in banks, in telcos, all of that, they're making all this money. If they put it in the bank, the rate of inflation is higher than the interest rate. It doesn't make any sense to them. But if you pitch them an opportunity that can yield them 15% on their money every year, which is really nothing to you if you do your profit numbers, all of a sudden you start to see that capital may not be the headache that you think it is. The big problem that people have is that they show up with their idea. They talk about the idea, talk about how it's going to make $1 million in the first 6 months and all that. And then on the back of that idea, they want to raise a lot of money. So the question I always ask them is, if something happens to this business and it doesn't work, because that's the thing about entrepreneurship. You have your plan, but the market has its own plan. Sometimes you show up, it gives you a sucker punch, and you hit reality, and then you know that. So what if, because there's no guarantee, what if you start this business and it doesn't work? The problem is that all you lose is your idea and the time you committed. That's all you lose. But the guy that has put in 50M or 100M loses that money. So at the end of the day, it's not an equal relationship. That person will lose more than you lose. So that's why nobody's giving you money, because you don't have enough skill in the game. And that's the biggest problem some people have. They want to limit how much skill they put into the game, but they want the person with the money, more or less, mumu money. That's what they're looking for. And that's the truth. Even though you might have a beautiful pitch deck and you speak in a very fantastic way, you're just looking for mumu money. And mumu money is money that will lose more than you will lose if something goes wrong. Because you see, there's a huge mindset difference between entrepreneurs and investors. Investors are hyper optimistic. If you ask entrepreneurs are hyper optimistic. If you ask any entrepreneur, tell it will work. People will buy. It will make money. It will be profitable. They never tell you, what if it does not work? They don't want to listen that way. And they will justify it in very different ways, But the typical entrepreneur is hyper optimistic. Investors are not the polar opposite, but they are not hyper optimistic. They are realistic. They are not pessimistic. They are not like it will not work. Investors are, what if it doesn't work? So investors think in terms of risk, because if they know the risk, they can prepare for the risk. So while they are saying it will sell, the investor is asking, what if it doesn't sell? And then the entrepreneur gets pissed off, because how dare you challenge my optimism? Meanwhile, the investor is asking in terms of, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't sell? What's your plan? Because that's the way an investor would think. So if you tell the investor that, I actually have a plan A, plan B, plan C. If we push this on the market, it doesn't work. This is our fallback. This is my mitigation strategy. That's the language of investors. That's what they want to hear. Risk management. Because they know that you will make money, of course, but they need to manage that risk. So this is usually the problem. Capital is a strategy problem. It's not a resource problem. If it were a resource problem, all it will be is once you have an idea, go to that building over there, fill a form, they'll give you money. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's either you are pitching to somebody who has the money for that person to give you, or you are changing your requirements around the strategy, like the example I give you. Instead of buying that equipment or buying that land, why not rent it or lease it? It will save you money. So it's a strategy thing. It's not a resource thing. So you can show up and tell me you need 150 million to start a business. I can look at your use of funds and I can cut it down to 25 million. And you can still start that same business. The only difference is that you thought it would cost you 150, but I cannot show you a path to 25. So at the end of the day, capital is a strategy. Some people might even end up, there are people who have started business without even raising the capital at all. Because guess what?
Yeah.
When you talk about capital, no capital alone, except you are in the business of selling money. If the product is the money, if you are going to be selling money, if that's your business, then that's a different. But most businesses don't sell money.
Yeah.
Most businesses want to use that capital to acquire something. If you ask them, okay, what are you going to use the capital for? They'll tell you they will rent an office, they will hire some developers, they will buy a vehicle. They want to use the capital. The capital is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself.
Yeah.
So if we then say, okay, what is the end? You need part of that money to hire developers. What if we don't pay the developers? What if we get some kind of stock options? What if you bring on the person as a co-founder? These are options that are on the table that will not cost you any cash today. So that's why I say capital is a strategy, because it all depends on how you are thinking about what you want to deploy. But if you are stuck in the mindset of capital is a resource, if I don't get this 25M, this business will not start, then that is where you have a problem.
So I will pick up on that, on what you just said right now. You made reference to two things. Number one, obviously, capital actually being the issue. Problem of capital is not a resource problem, but a strategy problem. Yeah. And I really love that. And you spoke about skin in the game. The very fact that a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking out for money actually don't have skin in the game. And that's the reason why a lot of them don't raise. Now, but what do you think about the current tech space in Africa? In terms of, I mean, when you say people doing pretty slide decks and everything, there was a time that was a thing, right? Everyone was raising, I'm raising. Everyone was raising something. But what do you think about the space? Where do you think people are getting it wrong? Do you think it's going to bust, or do you think it's going to get better? I mean, obviously, I know that funding has gone down right now, even itself in the tech space generally. If you're a first-time founder, your possibility of actually getting funded is getting next to minus something, So what do you think about that space currently? Do you think there's an abuse? What I mean, what's your mindset?
So there's a word you use, but I wanted to say it don't cast. That was the answer I wanted to give. It don't cast, because
it don't cast.
It don't cast. Essentially, it don't cast, because what is going on here is that when Africa was doing beautiful things with tech in the beginning, we were struggling to get the world's attention, particularly in the areas of fintech, clean energy tech, all those interesting, exciting things that help to sell the African story beautifully. Look at these creative entrepreneurs who have very limited resources, but see what they are doing. Africa is the future. So the thing with investors is that it can take them time to catch on. So the first couple of investors took the chance, they invested, and they started seeing the kind of returns that was going on. And then, of course, that filtered back into Silicon Valley. And what you started seeing was many VCs started creating portfolios for emerging markets, and part of that emerging markets was Africa. So at the end of the day, you started seeing that just because you created a fintech, you will raise money. Because there is money in a portfolio somewhere in Europe or America waiting to give that money to you. You just come show with your pretty slide deck, talk about a couple of use cases, and then they just give you that money. Because they have a target to give out that money. So that when they are reporting to their investors, they say, we have this much in emerging markets, and we're doing beautiful things in fintech, and all those things all those beautiful returns that are going on.
Buzzwords.
Part of what was funding that was there was very cheap money. The interest rates with the banks over there, very low. So people were getting money for next to nothing. You also had the whole quantitative easing thing, the whole thing that happened through COVID. There was a lot of money in the system. So funds were being channeled and Africa got lucky. Now, I still stand by the strong value proposition that tech has for Africa, but I think it may have been overplayed. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we are where we are, because now we need to separate the people who are offering real value from the people who just created something to raise investor money, essentially. The job of tech is to solve a problem, is to enable the solution of a problem, make it easier, faster, more convenient to solve a problem. If you are doing that actually, then you don't really need funding except to build out the product. The people who should be financing your business, your customers. If we look at the biggest fintech company in the world, between PayPal, Stripe, and the rest of them, they don't really need investor money. Those are cash flow machines. A lot of money flows into those businesses. Why would you give away equity when you are getting so much money coming in? The truth is that the cheapest way to fund a business, the sweetest way to fund a business is from your customers. Look at the deal. Customers don't ask you for equity. They don't charge you interest on the money they are giving you. They don't request to sit on your board of directors. They don't, a lot of things. So all the customer is asking for is give me a product, make me happy, and I leave you, you're fine with my money. I'm happy to give you my money. So most businesses that thrive, they thrive on customer money, not bank money. Banks are impatient. When it's time to collect, they will collect. Investors are impatient. When they get to that time horizon, they'll start asking you, okay, it's time to execute that exit strategy. Let's sell. And maybe you're just having fun. You don't want to sell, but they have to sell because they need to exit. So at the end of the day, the solutions that can crack problems in the market will be funded from customer cash flows. And if you have customer cash flows, it doesn't make sense that you want to give away cash cow because you want to raise equity. So many of those businesses that raise money were actually very poor on the customer cash flow side. That's true. So the pitch was, give us this money, we'll build out the product. If you look at the pitch there, we'll build out the product, we'll expand, we'll enter multiple markets. Please, why are we talking about entering the Kenyan market and the Ghanaian market and the South African market and the Egyptian market when you've not cracked the Nigerian market, which incidentally happens to be your own home ground? You've not cracked your home ground, but you're raising money to expand into all these other markets. But the thing is that that's what they wanted to hear. That's what the investors wanted to hear. Anybody who understands the way the market works will know that it didn't hold water.
That's very true. That's very true. So, I mean, when you just started talking about other African countries, it brought something to mind. In you released a report where you said top 100 business opportunities in Africa to watch in 2024. And I think there's something that interests me about the way you release your reports. You actually do break down business models and why they work. So what are some industries that you are currently looking at and you are saying that, hey, guys, do you think, okay, let me couch this question this way. Do you think there's a bandwagon effect currently happening that we are chasing the wrong thing, and do you feel like telling people like, hey guys, come, stop chasing that thing that you look shining. There's something really here that a lot of us are not paying attention to. What is that for you? What are you seeing?
Okay, so the interesting thing about Africa is that we have a commonality around where the opportunities are. And in Africa, most of the best opportunities are hidden inside problems, which is quite interesting because
I observed that we have similar. So I went on a program that brought different people from different African countries, and they told us to take a piece of paper and write our problems. And then we collected it together, and it was almost like they started reading everybody's problem. Everybody felt that it was reading their own. So it was almost like there was no difference. I just had to put that out there.
We need to have a mindset shift around how we look at our problems, because most of our opportunities are embedded inside of our problems. Where do I start from? Look at, in fact, the best place to find business opportunities about Africa is to watch Western media, because they are one of the biggest sources of, I think, without being politically correct, negative news, right? So when it comes to food insecurity, waste, energy, poor energy access, all those things they complain about Africa are multi-billion-dollar industries. So let's look at energy, for example, electricity. Less than half of Africa has access to reliable electricity. That's the base problem. So what that tells you is that in a market of about 1.3, 1.4 billion people, about 600 to 700 million people don't have electricity. Would they love to have electricity? Of course. Many of them have, in fact, we have more people who have phones than have electricity. And why that is curious is that phones run on electricity. You need electricity to charge phones. But you have more people with phones than have access to electricity. So it's clear they will need this electricity for something. It also then happens that in the same place, we are riding the wave of the latest emerging technology, which is solar. So we have an energy source that happens to be almost year-round, particularly if you live around the equator. Where this technology is coming from, if we're having this call and you were in Canada or the US, the first couple of minutes about this call would have been about the weather. I would have asked you about the weather, things like that. In Africa, we don't talk about the weather because there's nothing remarkable about the weather. It's always sunny and hot, which happens to be a problem that we tend to complain about. But that is also free energy. They would kill for that energy in Germany, anywhere in Europe, in Northern Europe. They will do the same anywhere in Canada because they have the technology, but we have the energy source. That's a huge opportunity. What this means is that instead of thinking of ways of deploying the national grid and saying the national grid has not gotten to remote parts of Taraba or Nasarawa and Adamawa or some places in Ebonyi or Imo State, with everybody has a roof over their heads, and that roof is a direct interface with the sun. So what it then means is that that is the problem, that's the solution that is scalable. It's interesting that it happens that solar is one of those industries that have been experiencing galloping growth. That's why it's a very interesting one because I'm starting to see people who are going off grid. They call the PHCM people and say, I've had enough of your, come and take your meter. They are going totally off grid because now you can see that there are air conditioners, freezers, fridges, TVs, everything that can be run directly from solar. So people are now asking, why do I need PHCM? So you see how a problem instantly it has become a solution. Another favorite of mine is waste. We have a waste problem. You just need to go out, on the streets, in the gutters. We have a waste problem. But now we're in the era of circular economies where it's better for things to be reused and recycled because it's good for the environment. It's also good for generating income in terms of profit because recycling appears to be something that instead of going to extract minerals or materials directly from the earth, it's actually cheaper for some materials for you to recycle them. Aluminium is one example. You use aluminium in everything from planes to cars to everything, but it is cheaper to recycle aluminium infinitely than it is to go and mine raw aluminium from the ground. Same with glass. It's better to recycle the glass than to go and mine fresh. So all these things that we call problems, that we complain about, we blame ourselves about, we blame the government about, these are just opportunities that hold income, that hold business potential. Which is why it's curious that when you see, there's one example I like to give. When the Japa thing, when you see people heading out of the airport, there are also people who are heading back. It's just that the people who are heading back, they don't really look like us. So if this place were as bad as they said it was, the movement should be one way. We should have planes filled up with people leaving, then empty planes coming back. But the planes are not empty coming back. There are people who are going to China, buy stuff, come back. Both Chinese, both Nigerians. They're going to the Middle East. They're going to Europe. Yeah. So it's an interesting story. Some people see problems, and what you do to a problem is you run away from the problem. You blame somebody for the problem. You avoid the problem. You criticize the problem. That's what it is. That same problem that you're seeing, some other people see opportunity. What do you do to an opportunity? You engage the opportunity. You explore the opportunity. You take advantage of the opportunity. You make the best that you can from an opportunity. So that's why, personally, I don't engage in the Japa conversation. Because that same thing you're arguing about, that is a problem to somebody, is an opportunity to another person.
So based on what you've shared about African opportunities, I mean, you've spoken about energy, you've spoken about waste. Now, there's the narrative that there might be a gap in the market, but there might not be a market in the gap. That's in terms of monetization, share of pockets, right? So do you see the fact that, yes, Africa might be, I mean, we always brag that we are 200 million people. And there has been arguments against that. People have even come around to say, I don't think Nigeria is 200 million people. I mean, but that's a debate for another day. But how do we see, how do you see the market opportunity in Nigeria? Is it in our people in terms of our size? Is there really wealth at the bottom of our pyramid to be captured? And are these people willing to pay for some of these services that we say there is an opportunity for?
The beauty in what you have just said is that it challenges the entrepreneurs in Africa not to just look at the business ideas, because the opportunities will not just be in the business idea. To give you an example, if a business idea has merit and provides value, as long as the person who sees that value has the purchasing power, nothing should stop them from buying it. But if what you're offering has value, but the person that sees the value doesn't have the purchasing power to acquire that value, you still don't have a business because the customer cannot buy. So that then creates, the challenge is no longer the beauty of the idea or the beauty of the problem you're solving. It's now around the beauty of your business model. And the business model can be changed in several different ways, which is that there are business models where there's a consumer, then there's a customer. The customer is different from the consumer. If you look at the business model of social media, for example, the same Africans you say they don't have buying power, they are always on the internet. They're always on Instagram, Facebook. Why? It's free. They're not paying anything, even though it's not entirely free, because the data you're using, you're paying for it. But it gives the illusion of being free, and that's enough. When you're dealing with human beings, the illusion is not very different from the reality. Most times, human beings cannot tell that difference, particularly their behavior. When they are thinking logically, they will tell you, oh, this is an illusion. But more than 90% of the time, we're not like rational people. So the illusion of being free is just the same as the reality of it being free. So most people on social media, as long as they're not spending money to go on social media, they will go on social media, they will trade a resource that somebody sees as valuable, but the person who is using social media doesn't think there's anything in it. I'm talking about your time, the time you're using to engage on those platforms and things like that. Somebody sees it as valuable, and they're getting it from you for free. And you're gladly giving it for free because you think they're giving you access to their platform for free. But then somebody else is paying, and that person is happy to pay. An advertiser, somebody who will make money by advertising to people or getting fans or promoting music or something. So you see that the consumer is different. The consumer, the people who use social media, which is like the bottom of the pyramid, the horde, is different from the customer, who is like the advertiser. And then the social media platform is the seller. So in this business model, for example, if you are coming through a traditional business model, you'll be like, social media, you can see videos, you can catch up with your friends, you can see what's happening. There are a lot of skits, you will laugh, you'll get engaged. But can Africans afford it? We're thinking of pricing social media around $37 a month. Do you think Africans will be willing to pay $37 a month to access social media? That's one way to ask the question. But the other way to ask the question is, what if we give it to them for free, right? In fact, some companies like Google and Facebook, Facebook calls its own free basics. We give them all these plans that if you get to certain areas, you can use the internet for free. Use social media, TikTok, Instagram, all of them, use it for free. We give it to you for free. What that means is that you are onboarding a lot of users, a lot of consumers. So how do you make money from this thing now? Now that you have a lot of attention, they figured out a business model where we use that attention and trade it for advertising money. We make a lot of money. Our advertisers are happy. Our consumers are happy. Those are the kinds of models we need to be looking at now. So the Africa problem is not a business idea problem. It's a business model problem. And business model essentially is about strategy. How do you structure this thing so that millions of poor people can solve this problem, can benefit from this solution at a very affordable price, at a cheap price, and then somebody else is paying for it, and that person is happy to pay for it. So it's a business model problem for certain areas. And with this, I'm looking at a kind of product that would appeal to everybody. Besides water and food, I would say that social media is in that category now. Even in my village, you have people who, they know what WhatsApp is. They use WhatsApp, all those things. Yeah, so it's more like food and water. It's gotten to that level. Then you also have to segment the market. When people say Africa is poor, it's not it can't be a generalization. There's still that 1%. 1% may look like a small number, but when you're multiplying it by 230 million people, it kind of stacks up, right? So you're looking at that should be about the neighborhood of 2 million plus people, right? Those people are not as sensitive to price. They are more sophisticated in their consumption, you know, and you can even tell in places like, I'm not sure I can tell I should be able to tell areas of Abuja apart, but in Lagos, it's very, very clear. There are neighborhoods you come into in Lagos, and it feels like you are not in Lagos. And then you go to other parts of Lagos, and it's as if you are somewhere else. So that divide, that economic divide, the inequality divide, there are people who have, and they're having more, and there are people who don't have, and they're having less. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's a political problem largely. But if you're approaching that problem as an entrepreneur, the way I look at it is this. What product can I provide that everybody can buy? That is one way to sell, because you're in a market of 220 million people. The numbers will count for you. That's one way of selling it. But there's also another way to sell it. Why would I charge everybody 10 naira when there's a 1% that is willing to pay me 100,000 naira if I can justify it and ask for it? So if I charge everybody 10 naira, for those 1%, I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. So even in some of our FMCGs, okay, I have to keep reminding myself that I'm not on radio, because on radio they'll tell you don't mention some brands and all those things. With this one, we can go.
No, please feel free. You can go.
So you go into a supermarket. There are products you buy, and you're like, this one is expensive. Let me buy this other one. And then what you don't realize when you look at the back of the packaging is that they are made by the same company. So you have peak milk. You have something like Luna. I think they have another product in that category.
I think they have 3 Crown. I think they have 3 Crown.
It should be 3 Crowns. So 3 Crowns, when you're looking at milk, 3 Crowns is called filled milk. There's filled milk, there's full cream milk. Peak milk is full cream. So that's like the top level. Then you have filled milk. You know, so at the end of the day, some people will be like, that peak is too expensive. Let me buy 3 Crowns. I beg. 3 Crowns is more budget friendly. But either way you go, the money is going to the pocket of the same company. That's that's one way of looking at the African market. I did an analysis recently, I think it was last month, where when the dollar was going up, the cost of Cerelac, baby food, was going up because it's imported. But then what the company has done, what Nestle has done, is that there's imported Cerelac. Then there's Cerelac made in Nigeria. So either way you go, some people will be like, my baby, I can never let my baby drink Nigerian Cerelac. Those people who don't think that anything good can come out of this country, that will never give their children Nigerian Cerelac, they'll go for the imported Cerelac. Those who are like, I cannot even afford to import, or why are we even importing Cerelac into the country when we have maize in Nigeria? Either way you go, your money is going to Nestle's pocket. So that's how I think the African market has to be structured. As a business, it will not help you to just entirely look at bottom of the pyramid. If you are stuck in bottom of the pyramid, it will limit your potential for profitability. It will limit your potential for what you can offer, all those things. But you can be flexible within Africa, because within that 1%, you have upper middle income, you have upper class, you have the expatriate community, you have business customers. You know, all those people, they are within the 1%. They can pay more, they are less sensitive to price. If you have something of value, you can offer. If all of us go bottom of the pyramid, Africa will turn to a place where they say, for those people in the 1%, you can't even find any quality stuff in Nigeria. Everything is just so low quality, low. Who will serve them? If you don't serve them, one importer will show up importing products into the country that will be serving that community, because they exist. So that's the danger in generalizing. Yes, if you go by the numbers, if you go by the law of averages, Nigeria is a poor country. But if you go by the law of segmentation, all fingers are not equal. All of us are different. Different people can afford different things. So I always advocate that flexible way of looking at the market. The pricing you set depends on who you are talking to. And don't forget, there are... this is quite interesting. What you sell will also determine, who you are selling to will also determine how you price the product and how you are going to sell it. This is a country that we still say is a poor country. But you look at the numbers. the amount of spending on things, on beauty products, particularly what you will call hair accessories, human hair, within the female compartment is huge. Whether those ladies, many ladies buy it themselves. For many of these ladies, their boyfriends or their husbands will buy it, or some other man will buy it. But bottom line is that it doesn't make sense, the volume of trade in human hair accessories we sell in this country, and you put it side by side with the statement that Nigeria is a poor country. Anybody that looks at those numbers will say there's something off here. How is it? Is it that these poor people have their priorities wrong? That they are spending so much on human hair, but then they are saying they don't have enough food, and then they are living below $1 a day. You see, it doesn't make sense, and that's because although this will help us veer into a different side. There are needs that are essential, things like food, water, things that you need them to survive, housing, clothing. They are essential needs. When it comes to those things, most consumers think logically. Why should I pay? If a bottle of water is 100 naira, why should I pay 200 for it? They're like, it's water. Let me just drink water. The second type of needs are emotional needs. You see this kind of needs around parents when they want to spend for their children, when a boyfriend wants to spend on the girlfriend, people who are in love, right? Anything that concerns strong emotions. Politics is even one example. You see somebody who says he doesn't have money, but when it comes to his favorite candidates, or even his favorite football club. You see this thing that people are shouting about now that DSTV has raised prices. Forget it.
Yes.
Let me tell you what's going on.
Yes.
And the reason is this. Even though spending power, purchasing power has dropped, football is an emotional need in Nigeria. So there are people who will go they will go on a hungry stomach, but they will still watch their favorite team. It is non-negotiable. So if you don't understand that all needs are not the same, people may skimp on their essential needs and say, instead of eating 3 times a day, let me just eat once. But when it comes to emotional needs, they will say, in fact, I will not eat today, but let me buy that ring for that my girlfriend. Let me take her out. That's one. The other type of emotional needs is our society, particularly the generation where we live in, appearances are very important. We're in the age of Instagram, we're in the age of social media.
Very important.
Where it is more important to look like you are doing well than actually doing well. So what it means is that people will spend on things that make them look like everything is okay. So they will do anything to keep up, which is not surprising. And you see how it connects. That's why the spending on cosmetic products going high, spending on personal care products going high. You look at the average young guy that has a beard, for example, somebody like you. What is happening with our ladies with the human hair, with the attachment, is happening to our guys in the beard gang. And the guys who have, yes, so the beard gang and the guys who do these complex hairstyles, whether it's the dreadlocks or anything at all, those guys are, any guy who falls into that category, they are very emotional about the beard or how their hair looks. So, which explains why for the average person, for somebody who just gets a haircut, you might go to the salon maybe once in a week or once in 2 weeks. For the guy who needs attention on the beard or the hair, you might see him in the salon every couple of days. And every couple of days means he's spending more than if he just had like normal haircut. And that's because it's an emotional need. It's important to him to look a certain way than, going hungry. If he's hungry, nobody will know and nobody will care. Being hungry will not show up on Instagram. Being hungry will not show up on TikTok. Nobody will know. But if my beards don't look right, if my hair looks ruffled, people will know. And that matters to me. It's an emotional need. So what I find is that if you're selling a product that applies to emotional needs, Africans, particularly the ones that live in urban areas, particularly the ones that fit the millennial Gen Z demographic, they are less price sensitive to spending on emotional stuff. This applies to anything that affects how they feel or how they look. That's how I break it down. If you sell a product that will significantly enhance how somebody feels or how they look. I've talked about the good side. There's also a black market, an underworld. While the spending on human hair and cosmetics products is rising, the spending on substances is also rising. Whether you call it weed or anything or colos or whatever, is also going high. And you see why? It's an emotional need. There are people who have not eaten, but they are buying weed and they are smoking weed. And it doesn't make sense. Why don't you use that money and eat? But he would rather spend that money on the weed or use it to buy a drink because it affects how he feels. So if you're selling anything that affects how people feel or how they see themselves, that thing you're talking about, bottom of the pyramid, that rule all of a sudden does not apply.
I mean, I remember during COVID, the beer market went up. A lot of people still kept buying more beer, more alcohol. The whole alcohol space actually went up. Now, but I mean, I want to ask a question. What have you seen as the so this question is going to be two-packed, and I would like you to discombobulate it, for lack of a better term. So, what have you seen to be the worst business models that people tend to fall into? And the reason I asked the question is this: I see a lot of businesses. When you started, you spoke about the fact that the way you grew up, you grew up in a trading environment where if the man was not around, the business could not do anything. If the man was not around, the business could not thrive. When the man is around, that's when the business functions. And it happens to be that a lot of businesses find it hard to go from that ceiling to the next level whereby they actually build a business. And we've not really seen sustainable enterprises that have gone beyond their founders as much in Africa. In Nigeria, for example, let me even just narrow it down to Nigeria. In Nigeria, we've not seen a lot of them that have gone beyond their founders. We've not seen a lot of them that have actually gone beyond their owners. You could actually tell. I mean, if you remember the case of Aliko Dangote, when they bought off the flour mills from him, and then the business began to tank, and then all of a sudden he took it back, and then the business began to do well, and it was almost like, what happened right now? Is it black magic here or what? So I mean, but that's taking Aliko Dangote because I mean Aliko Dangote is at a level. But what I'm talking about is just for small businesses, medium businesses who are looking to thrive. What are the worst business models that you will not encourage anyone to go into right now? And what are the traps that are stopping them from scaling to become Pan-African businesses? Right now there's been a whole conversation around build for the globe. Don't build just for Africa. Just don't build for Nigeria. I also like your comment on that.
Okay, so I think I approach everything from first principles because if we understand the first principles, anybody who is listening to this can apply it to their own situation because everybody's situation will be different.
Yeah.
There can't be any one size fits all. A business model that doesn't look appealing to me or you or to a majority of Nigerians may actually work for a minority of people. So that's why I like to go with first principles. And the first principle I like to start with is, what kind of business are you building? Because that's where people get it wrong. So it's not enough to say, I just want to start a business. I want to one day quit my job and then I'll have this business that I'm running. That's why I'm starting the business. Or my salary is not enough for me. I just want to start something on the side. I'll be augmenting my salary. Or I want to have that profile of I'm an entrepreneur. I like that name. I like the way it sounds. I want something that qualifies me for that title. So you got to start a business. These are some of the wrong reasons I've heard why somebody starts. Or the person says, I came out of school. I'm looking for help. I can't find a job. Let me just be doing something on the side. And those kinds of people are the ones who will keep telling. If you ask them what they do, even though when you have a deeper conversation with them, you see they are doing something intelligent, but they tell you a guy at the hustle because in his mind, if he doesn't get employed, he has not achieved his purpose. So no matter what he's doing on the side, it's just a hustle. Even though the money he's making now will even be bigger than any job anybody can offer him, right? So what are you building? And I told you that thing about frameworks. I basically see four categories of business anybody can build. If you want to deliberately choose the kind of business you start. The first type is a lifestyle business. That's what most businesses are. I just want something that will generate income, support me, I can pay my bills. I'm okay. I'm not begging anybody for money. Even if I decide to keep my job, even if the salary is not enough, I can augment from the business, right? That's the first type of business, lifestyle business. The second type is a family business. I'm building this business because I want people to know that this is what our family built. And once this is
Oh,
done,
really?
I'm handing it over to you, the children. So where I come from in the country, my town is known as the town where people sell pharmaceutical products. So before you count a
Okay,
couple of
that's
my
cool.
cousins, you'll find one person who is reading pharmacy. I'll give you an example, where I come from. Most people will say, the father started a pharmaceutical company. As a trader, those days in Nigeria, the regulations allowed you register the business, get a patent medicine license, and get a pharmacist to be attached to your shop, and you can sell pharmaceutical products. So those people went ahead. Most of their children, my son is studying pharmacy. My daughter is a medical doctor. All those things. It's because they are building something that they feel that by the time they retire, their son, who is now technically qualified as a pharmacist, can run that business. The downside to that is you now find some of those guys who trained as pharmacists, but they don't want to do pharmacy business. They want to go into tech, or they want to do something, or they want to do investment banking. So the danger there is that in your succession planning, you might be thinking that your children would want to continue this business, but you don't know what that generation will want. You don't know the major trends of that time. So anybody who's studying pharmacy now will feel like, they are not on the cutting edge. They want to be on the cutting edge. So they don't practice the pharmacy, they go and do something else. So it creates some kind of conflict in the family. That's it for family businesses. That being said, it can work sometimes. You find that the Middle Easterners, the Indians, more or less, you look at Mahindra, Tata, all these, those are family businesses. The goal is to leave a legacy. And you need to have a lot of unity in the family. Your succession planning has to be tight for family businesses to work. Many people in Nigeria think they are building family businesses. They are assuming that their children want to run those businesses. So you take money from that business, train the guy abroad in the US or UK, and you think that by the time he graduates, he will come back and join you and sell spare parts. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So you're just assuming that those kids would join. But that being said, that's a type of business. The other type of business is a venture kind of business. This one is very common among the younger people, where you start a business,
Yeah.
build it for 4 or 5 years, and you sell it. So you're not building that business for life. You don't want to have a full-time job in the business. You're looking at the business essentially as an asset. You start it from scratch, put in sweat equity, put in everything, build it to something of value, and then sell it. And then either retire or go and do it again. Go and build another venture and sell. So we're starting to see one of the most relatable examples would be the Paystack guys. Paystack was built within a space of 5 years, and they sold it, $200 million. It's a good deal, and there are people who are thinking like that. Many of the people who are raising venture capital, that is their line of thought. They will raise this 2 million from the investor, build it for and then they will exit at 20 million or 200 million or something. That's venture. The fourth type is I'll call it it's more of a philosophical type of business. The business that says they want to change something in the world. I'm struggling to find an example in Nigeria. Maybe Dangote, maybe, but let me explain what it means. There's no way Mark Zuckerberg is going to sell Facebook. The reason is, if you just need to look at the mission of the company, he wants to bring the world together.
Yes.
He wants to turn the world into a community so that communication is very, very easy for everybody. In fact, he wants to turn the world into a global village. It's only somebody like that will pay $19 billion for WhatsApp. That wasn't even worth that much. It's only somebody like that will buy Instagram. If you set up the next best app that is in line with that mission, Mark Zuckerberg is going to be knocking on your door. He tried knocking on Snapchat, they wouldn't sell. So if he can't buy you, he frustrates you. That's what it is, essentially. But his goal is that he sees that he has a calling to change something about the world. Elon Musk is like that. There's no way he's going to sell SpaceX. Because in his mind, human beings cannot be a single planetary species. We have to spread our risk. With the way we're running the planet, we may one day just implode or kill ourselves with a nuclear bomb or something. It makes sense that we should spread our risk. Let's move some people to Mars, and he's building the vehicles to make that happen with SpaceX. That kind of person will not sell the company. because he's thinking in a philosophical sense. He wants to change the world. So it's not about the money for him. It's not about money. It's not about even maybe it might be something, it might concern the ego. It's not even about family for him. No, it goes beyond all those things. And he's not going to sell the company. So those are the 4 types.
So essentially, most businesses are lifestyle businesses, and there's nothing wrong. In fact, I'm a proponent of the lifestyle kind of business. It supports your needs. Depending on the way you structure it, you can get a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom. You can create impact. Essentially, you're living life on your own terms if you structure it properly. But there are downsides, and I'll talk about them because of your question. The family side, I don't see anything wrong with it. But me personally, I see something wrong with passing on something to children, something they didn't work for. I think it breeds a sense of entitlement. So me, I don't believe in it. And a way to justify that belief is that I think that by the time it is their turn to take over anything I'm building, they may not even be interested in it at that time. So why bother? Venture is something I like, but I like it in a passive sense. So I can hold minority interest in businesses. Because building a venture is difficult. You have to put in your blood, sweat, and tears to build up the value. So those are the people that use the language of you have to scale, you have to grow, you're looking at runway. I work with entrepreneurs across different industries. But for those people who are within tech, many times they don't realize that their reality is very different from somebody who is starting an agricultural business or a manufacturing business or a laundry, dry cleaning business. The metrics are totally different. There's no pressure for scale. But a tech business has to scale because that's how you grow the value of the asset so that you can sell it. That's the only reason why you're under pressure to scale. But for many businesses, there's no pressure. They will grow at their own pace. And then for the philosophical ones, very few people are called to that. In fact, you have to have elements of being a madman to do that philosophical one. So some people think they are doing it for philosophy. But when Zuckerberg, for example, knocks on your door and makes you an offer you cannot refuse, that's when you know that you are really building a venture, not a philosophical business. So that's one part of it. Now, having said all of this, if you say you want to start a lifestyle business, there are different flavors to this. One of the mistakes, like you asked, that I see happening is that there is a huge tendency for copycats in Nigeria. People see a business that is booming, and they say, this kind of business is and this guy is not even doing anything. I can easily do it now. 1, 2, 3, I'll start it, and it start booming. I've seen that a lot with restaurants. So you see people, they just come, create. It's like they spend most of the money and the thinking on the interior decor and the Instagram page that they don't understand they're in a very difficult business. Restaurants are cutthroat, very unforgiving, very demanding, very tight profit margins. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can get into trouble. So if I drive within the Lekki area and all that, you see many of them, they open. By the time your friends and family show up for that opening, you see the place dries up. And when it's time to renew your rent, you cannot renew, so you close. So I see a lot of that happen. And the reason it's happening is people go under the assumption of there are 220 million people in Nigeria. There are 22 million people in Lagos. People eat every day. So they go and start that restaurant and then give it the whole branding and everything. The branding guy will collect his money. The interior decor person will collect his money. Landlord will collect money. All the people you employ will collect money. But you have just been spending money. You have not collected anything. It's very likely you will not get any money. And that's because of that crowding effect. You don't understand the industry you are getting into. Food is more or less like is an essential need. So if I need to eat, think of food as calories. If I need 500 calories, my body doesn't care whether it comes from eating bananas, eating granules, soaking gari, eating at a fast food restaurant, or doing fine dining. I can get 500 calories from any of those options. When the economy is biting, I will go for the cheapest, most available option. So there are many things that are competing with your restaurants. There's the mama put on the streets. There's me sacrificing and entering the market on a Saturday and cooking for the entire week. I'm stocking my freezer. That is a competition to the restaurant, because instead of coming to the restaurant to eat, I'll pack my food as I'm going to work in the morning. I'll eat at work. That food I'm eating at work from my house is money I'm not spending in your business. So it's an industry where you have a lot of alternatives and substitutes that are indirect competitors. So you're not approaching it with a big picture perspective. You're just looking at it with
But
there are
what do
plenty
you
of
think?
people
What do
in
you think
Lagos, there are plenty
about
of
the
people in
airline
Abuja, people who
business?
buy, people who eat. So
I
why
don't.
I can talk about
Anyways,
the airline business, but I want to believe that many of the people who are listening to us don't have an
tell
interest in
me.
starting an airline, may never start. And
Okay,
I want
tell
to
me.
attack
Tell
those
me.
businesses that they are likely to start. POS. POS.
Yeah.
So everybody is doing POS now. If I tell you who's really enjoying the POS business, it's quite interesting. The likes of
Yeah.
MoneyPoint, PalmPay, the guys that give the infrastructure, run the infrastructure for the POS business, they are the ones I envy. But you see this person who is, how much is 5,000 naira? You tell me 200. The guy down the road that is hungrier than you are will sell it to me for 100 naira. So all of a sudden, money is now a commodity. Because, and I asked the question the other day, the guy was looking at me with he was shocked by the question. I said, I want to withdraw 5,000 and you're saying it's 200. That guy is offering me 5,000 for 100. What is different about the 5,000 you will give me than that guy's? So you see, that's the problem. When you're in a commodity business, the only way you can compete is price. And I'm very suspicious of businesses where the only way to be better than your competition is to reduce your price. Those businesses generally don't do well because that race is a race to the bottom. You cut 100 naira today, I cut 150, and then tomorrow you cut 200. It's only the customers that are enjoying, but our businesses are suffering. So any business where the opportunity to create competitive advantage is not there, the only option is to compete on price. I don't even touch those kinds of businesses. And if I see somebody who wants to start it, I'll just congratulate them and say, thank you. You are very lucky that we are coming in contact, because I've just saved you a lot of money and tears. Because if you go into this kind of business, how do you differentiate yourself? What you're selling is what every other person is selling. The only person that can differentiate in the POS business is the Nigerian minting company that mints the money. So if you can give me customized naira that another POS will not give me, then you have something. But you can't do that. All of you have to sell what you received. So that's it. The only person who is differentiating is the money point that is giving you the machine.
Yeah.
They have knocked out the banks. Most POS people don't use bank POSs. You hardly see any POS person say, my machine is from Zenith or from First Bank, or no. It's either MoneyPoint, PalmPay, OPay, all of them. That's where I see the interesting part. All the other people are pawns. And they are playing the game of price competition, which is not sustainable. Most times it's not profitable, except you can form a cartel where you come together, all of us agree and say our cost now is 500. Anybody that sells below will come and beat the hell out of you.
What other
And
business do you see people
that's the only time.
tempted to go into? I'm interested in hearing this.
The pure water business. I know where it falls to. Nigeria is hot. Everybody's drinking water all the time. So you go in and you say, a very brutal business. A very, very brutal business. So if you think of it, what you're doing is you're bagging water, which, if anybody has a borehole, you can get that water. And you're putting it in a nylon, which is generic nylon, and you're selling it. So what exactly will you compete on? The color of the nylon? You can't even compete on the color of the water, because if you do anything to the water, it's no longer water. Nobody will touch it. So essentially, you cannot touch the water. You can't even play with the nylon, because there are some design rules that will apply to pure water. People need to see the product through the packaging. So it has to be transparent. The moment you color it black or blue or green, people just think you're hiding something. Maybe the water is not clean or something. So it's going to affect you. So you're in an industry where everybody has to wear the same school uniform. And you want me to pay more for yours than the other, it cannot work. So you find that the only way you can beat somebody in the pure water business is if you can be great at distribution. That is even the number. That's the clincher for if you can distribute solidly, your customer service is solid. So if you sell to all these mama puts or supermarkets or restaurants, you give them on credits in the morning. Come early in the morning. In fact, in Lagos, the distributors of pure water, that's the pure water companies, are one of the earliest risers. By 5 o'clock, 5:30, you have to leave. Because if you come late, another company has dropped water for that your customer. And you are not charging the customer, it's on credit. So it's when the customer sells that. So all of you are doing the same thing. You are selling the same product. You are selling the same way. You are doing the same thing. Terrible business. Except if I go into an area that is emerging, or I get a captive market. A captive market is like an estate. Maybe they say in this estate, it's only my water they will sell. That's fine. A university campus is only my water they will sell. That's fine. Except you can capture and hold the market. If it is this entire market, let all of us sell. Don't even try it. That kind of business. There are more. The laundry dry cleaning. There are 220 million people. They go to work. People need to wash their clothes. Let me. Oh boy. So, 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 so that's the danger. That's the danger in uh, going into a business that is booming, that is selling, because you are being misled by an illusion. You are being misled that the moment I open today, I will sell, which is true. It's not lack of sales that will likely kill you. It's competitive pressure that will crush you. So that's the danger. So my key is, if you're going into a business, you confirm that there is a demand for that product you're selling. The next thing I will ask you to confirm is there a way you can stand out? Is there something that customers in that market are currently complaining about? Is there something they are pissed off about? Is there something that the current players in that market are being ignorant about, something they are taking for granted, something they are not doing, they are not innovating? If you can fill up those gaps, then we have something. But again, there's a caveat, particularly in tech. In tech, I've seen situations where your whole product is a feature that your competitor can build over the weekend. And by Monday, your business is gone. So just make it such that your product is not just one feature that one of the established tech companies will just switch on. They get their developers and say, you guys do marathon. We'll pay you guys bonus. Work Saturday, Sunday. By Monday, they launch. And all of a sudden, you're out of business. Because your entire product was just a feature on their platform. There needs to be sufficient separation and differentiation such that for your competitor to do what they are doing, they may need to change their business model, their product in such a way that will be discomforting to them, that they will just let you be somehow. So what we're seeing, this example goes to our fintech space. We have so many fintechs now. In fact, as the money is drying up, the last ones are just trying to get the final deal flow before the whole thing dries up. Almost all of them are either into payments or some into remittances. Essentially, they're doing the same things, and they call themselves financial services. But they are too concentrated in certain niches of the market. Meanwhile, there are areas that need attention. Nigeria's insurance space is very underdeveloped, very weak, poor patronage, and there's a huge market for it. Nobody's touching that. Why? It is hard. So it's the first person who breaks into it, and then you see the flood will follow it. Funding, particularly now what we're doing is micro lending, but we're not seeing a lot of business lending yet within fintechs. So if you want to lend, you want to borrow small money and either bet or do something, all these ones that keep chasing people around or keep sending you messages that so person is owing money, we're still doing micro lending, consumer lending. But the main lending that we need to unlock our markets and our economy is still not yet there. There are several other important, interesting areas. Wealth management is there. There are some fintechs I see that are doing it, but we're not really there. So we see too many players concentrating in some parts of the industry, and there's still open space in other parts. There are some that are doing it. Others are still trying to catch on, but it's not yet fully blown as it should be. Some part of the blame may go to regulation. Financial services is a regulated industry, and sometimes you have to lag or follow the regulation. Even though there have been instances where we try to leapfrog the regulation, but it's like the regulation is a ceiling above your head.
So, what structural mistakes do you see businesses make that you think, if a lot of businesses will get right, will position us for scale? Because, not let me not even use the word scale. I'll use the word growth, because I mean, scale is a whole different. It's part of growth, but what I just mean is growth in terms of maybe better revenue, being able to position yourself for input from investors into your business, being able to position yourself for greater corporate governance, for example. What are some mistakes that you rapidly see? I know you work with a lot of businesses. So what are some mistakes that you keep seeing that a lot of people make? And what are some mindsets that you think African businesses need to embrace in order to be able to break those glass ceiling that has kept a lot of businesses small?
Okay, so in terms of structure, the underlying defect I find is that many business owners don't treat their business as a separate entity from themselves. And this is coming from our society at large. How you get significance or respect in our society is by what you own. That's how we are as Africans, many parts of Africa. I own this number of houses, I own this number of cars, I own this number of phones, I own. So your sense of worth comes from what you own. And we take that mindset to a business. I own this business. So what it means is that anything that is in the business that the business produces is my own. So all of it, so that's why it is not strange that if this week the business made 750,000 naira, there's nothing wrong with taking 500K from that money, spend some at the club, tonight, and then pay for school fees and do some other stuff. It's my business. I own the business. Anything the business owns is my own. So because that separation is not there, you do not allow the business stand on its own 2 feet. Because when we can't draw the line between the bills of the business and your own bills, when it's time to grow, we don't know who exactly is being a drain or a drag on the business. So I think that is one significant defect. It should be very clear that there are 3 ways you can get money from your business. One way is as the owner of the business. But as the owner of the business, you cannot just dip your hand into the till and take anything that is there. There is a protocol for how your business pays you as the owner, and that is called profits. So many businesses mistake money coming into the business, cash, revenue, sales. How much did we sell today? 500K. We just assume we have 500K. No. Part of that money is the cost for your goods. Part of that money will be used to pay salary. Part of that money will be used to pay rent. A part of that money will contribute to your rent. So what you own is not the sales. What you own is a percentage of it, which is called profit. So it is that profit that you own as the owner, not the sales. Any business owner that can unlock this in their head can then put themselves on a path to growth. Because when you learn that what you own is a profit, you will have to wait for that profit to materialize. By the time the sales come in, you pay for your goods, pay your employees, pay everything. The one remaining is your own money. So what it then means is that if you know that the profit from your business is like 100K every month, if you are living above 100K, it shows that you are being a drain on the business. You're actually eating into. So why I'm saying this is that some people realize, and trust me, this is a big thing. There are many people who show up that are looking for supernatural solutions, and they call it different names. So they use things like there's a spiritual termite, spiritual ant, spiritual whatever eating their capital. There are people from the village, all sorts of things you hear. And by the time you hear it, you're like, God is not going to leave what he's supposed to do and then come and do something that you should be able to do for yourself. And that is the problem. People not respecting these basic rules. They take things that belong to the business as their own, and then over time, it shows up as shortages, either in capital or in cash, that sort of thing. And then they say they start pointing hands, somewhere else. So your business is an independent entity from you as a person. And if you want that business to grow, you have to respect the relationship. Every relationship that works is about respecting boundaries. You have to respect the boundaries. And like I was saying, there are 3 ways. There are 3 relationships and 3 boundaries you have with your business. The first is as an owner. As an owner, you have a right to the profits of the business. If you own 100% of the business, 100% of the profit belongs to you. If you own 50% of the business, 50% of the profit belongs to you. Except you decide to reinvest the profits into the business. But you have the right to that profit. The second relationship you have with your business is as an employee of the business. You might have the title CEO or founder. As long as you work in the day-to-day operations of that business, either on a full-time basis or part-time basis, that business owes you money. That business may not be able to pay you now, but that business owes you money. And if you structure it properly, the debt that the business owes you can actually be part of what you add to the valuation of the company when you want to sell equity in the future, or you want to bring a new shareholder on board. But people do not take cognizance. They work for their business for free for 5 years. And for those 5 years, you ask them, are you not earning a salary? They say no. And they are proud to say it. It's not supposed, even if your business cannot pay you cash, it should be able to pay you in something else. It should be there on the books that the business is owing you 5 million naira. 5 million naira for working for 2 years or working for 1 year or something. Call it something. Let it be in the books. So that when the business becomes profitable later, you can draw that money. It is money that the business owes you. And why it is good for you to capture it is that if you have other shareholders then or other investors then, it will not look weird that now that the business is profitable, you're not taking out extra money. No, it will be clear that this is money you worked for, but the business could not pay you. So those are the boundaries you have to respect. As an employee, you are entitled to a salary from the business. How much the business can afford to pay you and when the business can pay you can be negotiated. But you have a right to a salary and income from the business. That's as an employee of the business. The third relationship you have to your business is as a creditor. You can lend money to your business as a creditor, and your business can also lend money to you as a debtor. So those things that some people do where they go and just dip their hands and take money from the bank account or dip money from the till. It may be that your circumstances require that you do such a thing, but that thing should be recorded that the business lent you money. The business lent you money, or the business is short on capital. You need to go and buy stock, but there's not enough money. You now take some of your money. You sold one land or sold one house or went into one of your savings accounts and took money and put into the business. You did not account for it. What just happened is that you have lent money to your business, and you can lend money to your business on interest. All these things are acceptable by law. And when you're accounting, particularly for tax purposes, for example, you deduct interest on loans before you pay the tax man. If your business is paying you interest, that's one way of harvesting money from the business legally without paying tax on it. But these are things that people don't do because they don't structure the relationship between themselves and their businesses, and they don't define the boundaries. They think that by defining the relationship or by defining the boundaries, it will not pay them. From what I've explained to you now, you see that there are many ways you can benefit from your business if you structure it properly. I've seen when you go to a business that is run this way, that's where you see the beauty. I've had the pleasure of working for a gentleman who, where the company works, he owns the building. So instead of giving out that building to any tenant, the tenant of the building, his tenant, because he owns the building, his tenant is his business. And the business pays rent to him, the landlord. So on top of being an employee, CEO, he draws a salary. On top of being a part owner, majority owner of the business, he draws profits. He's also a landlord. So the business pays him rent. And there are different caps. There's nothing like I'm CEO. When you're wearing landlord cap, you wear landlord cap, collect your full rent, everything. When you're wearing CEO cap, collect your salary, no story. Don't pity the business. The business should owe you, put it in the books. So these relationships can favor you if you structure it properly and if all those things are recorded. But these are things that people do not take cognizance of, and it can damage the culture of the business. And I'm talking to people who have employees that are working to them in the business. There is something that happens when employees see the oga taking money from the company, just putting his hand and taking money from the company. There's something that happens mentally. Even though, yes, it is your business, you are the owner of the company, you're also a human being, like that other guy you hired who is a human being. So it's like, if Oga can take money like this, myself, I fit take. After all, I work harder than Oga in this business. Is it because he owns it? Are you listening? Are you listening to that kind of rationalization? And that is human beings for you. But when you structure it that Oga is not taking this thing actually is a debt. The Oga actually owes the business. It's a debt that Oga will pay back. And we're taking it from Oga's next salary. People then start to see that there's accountability, there are checks, there's no free lunch, nothing is free. Anything you take from here will be taken from you. So Oga is taking money as a debt. We're not paying him part of his salary because he's paying back that loan to the business. Because the business is different from Oga, and the business is also different from you as an employee. So when they see how you are respecting the boundaries of the business, it kicks in. Anybody who comes in will be like, if the owner of the business is treating the business like this, who I be to take certain to just take certain chances and just feel I can do anything. So many times we forget that we are social creatures. And one common thing with humans is that we do mirroring. It's one of those things that they say that if you're in a room with people, the moment one person starts yawning, unconsciously, many people in the room start yawning. It's as if something was transmitted. It's the same way if you are talking to somebody in a room, all of a sudden you will notice that the cadence of your voice, the tempo of your voice, even how you are sitting will mirror the other person. It's the same way if you are working with somebody, if naturally you are a fast walker and the person you are working with takes his time and is slower, you will notice that after some time, it's either the slow person picks up and starts walking fast like a fast guy, or the fast guy will slow down and match the pace of the other person. So we're always mirroring. So that's why when you come into a business as a leader, a lot of stuff, you're giving off a lot of vibrations as a leader because people are looking up to you, particularly your employees. So that's why the relationship you have as the relationship you have with the business is important. If there is no sense of respect, if there's no sense of defining the boundaries, understanding why the boundaries are there and respecting those boundaries, anybody you bring into that business, either as a senior level executive or a junior staff, a janitor, they are going to abuse the business the same way you're abusing it, even though they don't have the right to abuse it because they don't own the business. So that is a common fundamental mistake that happens. And when culture takes roots, all of a sudden you cannot trust somebody to, your business is doing well in Lagos, doing very well, but you get a lot of orders from Abuja. So what it means is that it's a signal from the market that you should expand to Abuja, but you don't have the confidence to expand to Abuja because you're a human being. You can only be in one place at a time. But who will you trust to go to Abuja and open that office? You'll be afraid that the person would, as they say, run you streets. So you rather just put your eyes on what you can see. And that opportunity of opening in Abuja never happens. Contrast that with what we see in structured businesses. A business is doing well in Europe, is present in a couple of European countries, and they hear this thing about emerging markets, Africa, and they want to come into Africa. They send one man, one guy, one of their employees, one white man, to come and open their Nigerian office. The guy will come to Nigeria, he will do office selection, open the office, hire all the employees, run the business, one man. And that's because the culture is right. The guy knows that you just can't do certain things because the vibrations they are feeding off that they are feeding off from the leader shows that there is a certain structure to things. You have to respect the boundaries of the business. Even if you want to take things, you call it something. That money you are taking from the business, what are we calling it? Is it salary? Is it a debt? Is it rent? It should have a name. It can't just be you're taking something from the business just like that. So
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I mean, I mean,
yeah.
if I take you any longer, I'm sure I will get a consulting bill at the end of this call. So no, because it's been a phenomenal few hours, really. I mean, the way you broke down everything. Anyone that watches this podcast should ask for your account number because you've really done justice to the topic. You know. So I mean, so a final question. A final question.
Thank you.
I think I asked it, but I spoke about
Mhm.
mindset, right?
Yeah.
What mindset do you think
Okay.
a lot of African entrepreneurs need to embrace? I mean, you've touched on it a bit. What mindset do you think a lot of them are not
Mhm.
embracing in terms of the available resources around us? Do you think we are overreaching in terms of trying to build? So let me couch the question this way. I sat down with a person once, and the person said
Mhm.
they believe that the Western world is in the future. We are in the past. So we
Okay.
can't expect to build businesses that they are
Mm.
building today if we've not built businesses that they built yesterday. I think the person was trying to talk about infrastructure,
Mm.
businesses and all. What do you think about that in reference to mindset and available resources and building for our realities?
Okay. So I there's some merit to that statement, but I don't entirely agree. I don't entirely agree with the gradualist school of thought, which is that we have to build
Yeah,
just the way they
100%.
built, right? If we built, if we built the way they built, many people don't know that mobile banking first started happening in Africa before it
Right.
ever happened in the US. And the reason it could not happen in the US was because of how their financial system was built, particularly their banking system, right? So there are certain benefits that come with lagging. And because you are lagging, you can benefit from the mistakes that they have made. And you don't have to go through the same mistakes. You can just dodge some of them and then more or less leapfrog. The equivalent of this is like saying that Africa doesn't deserve to have broadband internet because we haven't paid our dues with DSL and 2G. We should still be in 2G. What are we doing with broadband? We don't have the need. In fact, we don't even need to stream videos. We have to do VCR finished with DVD. It doesn't make any sense. So in some respects, in some industries, gradualism can be justified. In many other instances, it cannot. Because whether you solve a problem with 1997 technology or you solve it with today's technology, the market, particularly the customer, will pay for what gives them the most value. Sometimes it might be that old technology built something that is more relevant to our context in Africa. In that case, people will see more value in it. Sometimes it could be that you build something with the latest technology, and the problem you have is timing. So at the end of the day, I don't want us to get stuck or confused by which way should we go. Should we go the linear way, the gradualist way, or should we just leapfrog? I think there's only one person that has the right to decide this, and it is the market. It is the person who is paying for that value. So if it is that there's some 1997 technology that is most relevant for Africa right now, and that is what will work for us. You have to be pragmatic about it. You give the market what the market wants. There's some cutting edge technology you sell right now that is either too expensive or not even relevant. People will not pay for it. So let's allow the market decide, depending on what the needs are. There are certain areas. So look at energy in Africa. It is clear we need cutting edge. We are exactly where solar is right now, and that's where we need to be. So every use case, every context is different. So I think.
All right. So, I mean, to douse the seriousness a little, I'll ask some, as we are fixing to close, I'll ask some very direct questions, a bit light-hearted questions. So, if you could have, first of all, who is your entrepreneur crush right now in the African landscape? Who is someone that you look at and you say, Kai, this person really has it?
It will be Aliko Dangote, but not for the reasons that you think. So why I say not for the reasons that you think, most times we've heard all the songs and everything. When people look at Dangote, they are drawn to the money that he has. Interestingly, I am not interested in having that kind of money because I know the kind of sacrifice that will come with it. I was privileged sometime in 2010 or 2011. We worked on something for him. So all of us were lodged within the same hotel and all that. And that was the first time I heard him say directly that he doesn't sleep beyond 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. That what does he need that kind of sleep for? Why would he sleep beyond 3, 4? I'm like, oh no, I don't want this. If that is what will come with this level of wealth, totally counts me out. So I am not drawn to the wealth that he has. What I'm drawn to is I like his gutsy. So he believes in the African dream and he's all in on it. It's very difficult to find somebody who is all in on Africa. In fact, it's so good. Some people say it's so bad. I watched one of his the interview he had with on what's his name, the guy who owns the Carlyle Group, one of the investors in the Carlyle Group, Rube something. He's a major private equity investor, and he said he doesn't have any house outside of the continent. So that's one thing. He's all in. So I like somebody who is all in on his beliefs, and I like how he doesn't have to do all this. That's the thing people need to understand. He doesn't have to do all this. The model that works very well in Africa, but that is quite popular, is rent seeking. You have a rent-seeking economy where somebody has an oil well and you're just extracting the resource. You have a mine, you're just extracting the resource. Building value, like building manufacturing capacity, building a refinery, all these things, they are very risky. They are very risky projects. He doesn't have to do it, but he can only do it from a place of belief, which connects me back to something I said before. When I was telling you about philosophical kinds of businesses, that people who are building businesses
A
on the
mission.
back of a strong belief, you cannot buy them out. It's not about money. I mentioned then that the only person I can really see in Nigeria is a Dangote, and that is the reason why. It's very clear. It's not just about the money. He has already crossed that mark. He doesn't need more money. So that's why he's my entrepreneur crush, and not for the reasons
All
that
right. So
people
my
would
next
think.
question is, what's something you thought will be really unsuccessful but ended up being successful?
That one is Airbnb. Oh my goodness. I laughed it off when I heard it the first time. You're telling me people will come into another person's private space and I would willingly rent it. I'm like, this is a very stupid idea. But there you go. You see? There you go. So I actually thought it was even every day I still see their success. I'm marveled at how this thing is still standing. You know, it just tells you how, yeah, it just takes you back to that thing about human nature. You cannot afford to underestimate or overestimate human beings. To think that people are very personal and private about their spaces. To think that people will actually rent out their space to complete strangers, it beats my mind when I heard it the first time, and it still beats my mind.
I think I agree with you there. I'm also one of those people. Airbnb, I was like, are you mad? I don't even want people staying in my space. But for some reason it has worked. Uh, so
It
I
has
mean,
worked,
the next
yes, it
question
has.
is this: if you didn't have to sleep, assuming you were not a man's life was not dependent on sleep, what would you spend your extra 8 hours doing? Yes, like you,
If I
not
didn't
like
have to
your health to
sleep,
be affected, like you were okay, like God made it that you are like John Paul Iwuoha is does not need sleep. What would you spend the extra yes, what would you
yes,
spend the
does not
extra
need
eight
sleep.
hours doing?
So, so incidentally, how I know this answer is what I do in my not my spare time, but idle time. There's what they call idle
Yes.
time that nothing really fits in. And okay, this is a podcast, I can say it. When you are sitting on the toilet, that is time people think
Yes.
you can't use it for anything else. Whatever you do in that time is what you do when you are not sleeping. And for me, I either have something in my ear or I'm on YouTube watching some interview, documentary, training, lesson, as in I'm enamored by business, new business models, um, new techniques, new ideas, how somebody solved raising capital, how somebody finally cracked growth, how somebody finally cracked an unmotivated workforce. And I listen to it all day. And this is what I also do all day. So when I'm talking to my clients or my students, they show up with any kind of problem. And I play like a game. I'm like, let me see what they're going to come up with now. Let me see whether, and you're on your feet because nothing prepares you. It can be a curveball. So it is how I used to test how current and how capable I am within that space. And every single day, it keeps getting better. So I'm not doing it. There's no target for it. It's just that, okay, I don't have a favorite football club. I don't play golf. I'm not crazy about Formula One or any of all those things. The only thing I will tell you I am fascinated by is business. That's the
I
topic that
I can
gets
see
me.
I can see how
Anything
you
I'm doing, anywhere I'm doing. If at the point I'm tired, if at the point I'm tired about it, I can watch a documentary about something else, but it's unlikely going to be. I also do comedy. You know, sometimes I just feel, let me decompress, let me, that sort of thing. Yes. But I can't do comedy for 8 hours. No. The only thing I know I can do for that 8 hours is either listening to something related to
what's your
business or
favorite
talking about
podcast?
business. Favorite podcast, Diary of a CEO.
I would have suspected you were a founders
Yes.
guy.
Not really. I've done it quite a couple of times, but
Yeah.
sometimes it becomes cliche. But the good thing about Diary of CEO is sometimes, and that is the flavor to this. They bring in somebody from one weird area. It could be healthcare, it could be cardiology, it could be mental health, it could be somebody in a
Yeah.
band. So I'm like, who knows what this guy is going to say now that I'll be like. So I listen to people who ordinarily you might tune off and say, what can I learn from this person? Uh-huh. So, but I'm like, if this kind of person can come on this podcast. So there's Diary of a CEO, there's the Tim Ferriss show. Why I love the Tim Ferriss show is that Tim Ferriss will hit you like 2 hours or like
Yeah.
3 hours of content. And I really do that on like long journeys. When I'm on a long journey, I totally absorb that. There's an African podcast I used to listen to, but I'm not sure. I think they're out of Mauritius or so. The name starts with Entrepreneurs something. They started
Oh,
after I
really?
started my podcast, but then I noticed they're not as frequent. But yeah,
What's your favorite?
that sort of thing.
Okay.
So, and then
Yes, I'm listening.
incidentally, your podcast caught my attention, and then a couple of days later, you reached out to me on Instagram. I'm like,
Are
what
you
kind of tip is this? What
serious?
is this? So yeah, I'm telling you, I saw your thumbnails. I saw your
Okay.
thumbnails on YouTube
Yes.
because, as you can imagine, if I watch
Yeah.
Diary of a CEO, under the next,
Yeah.
very likely, on one of those times I saw and
Yes.
then your thumbnails are quite catchy with
Yes.
the lemon green and the. So like, so the more I saw it initially, I was like, okay, is this impact theory? No, it's not impact. No, this another. So then I saw you. There was this real estate guy you interviewed. I think he went through some difficult time with his business.
Yes.
Maybe he lost money
Yes.
or something like that.
Yes.
And then, uh-huh, uh-huh. So that was quite interesting.
What's that?
And then I noticed something. You let your audience talk. It's not, maybe you take it for granted, but I've been on a couple of these things, and I can let you know that for many hosts, there's a pressure to either want to direct the conversation or want to also show that they too they know
Yes.
something about it. So it's either they, yeah. So it's either they interject or they won't really let the person talk, or they are. And as a listener, I know how many times I catch myself like, allow the guy talk now. I know how many times I do. So, so, it's refreshing to see a Nigerian who is like, he actually allows the thing flow, and then he doesn't. So there's a difference between allowing somebody flow and waiting for them to finish talking so that you can actually say that thing that's in your
Say
mind.
that. Say
And
that
many
in your
times the audience
mind.
can tell the difference. Uh-huh. Many, many times the audience can tell the difference. But when you allow the person flow,
Yes.
and then when the person has finished his flowing, the segue or what you continue with is actually
Yeah.
related to what that person was just
So,
saying.
but can I
That
ask
means
a
the
question?
conversation is organic. Is it ever when you have a list and you're like, okay, finish talking first. Let me ask you the
Can
next
I
thing
ask
that
a
is on the
question?
list.
If someone was to tell you now, I'm starting a business, or I want to start out as an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
I learn by documentaries a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What documentaries would you recommend to them that you're like, see, just go and
Okay.
watch these things first and come back?
Documentary. But
Okay.
well, it's not a documentary. I learned in the early days. I really learned a lot from Dragons Den.
Yeah.
Somehow I preferred Dragons Den
Mm,
to Shark Tank,
mm,
the American version. So I really, really learned a lot, and I still learn from shows like that. I know that there's
yeah.
Lions Den, I believe, in Nigeria. Started recently. I see their clips, I see their reels on Facebook, and it's very, very interesting. For anybody who is listening to this that wants to know what it feels like to be in a room with an investor, that's one, be in a room. Then also be in an investor's head. Those shows really help you understand. And why I like it is that the investor is the perfect mirror to an entrepreneur. Because remember
Yes.
what I told you about their mental profiles.
High
The
risk.
entrepreneur is
Yeah.
highly, hyper optimistic, always thinking it will work. That's how they think in terms of statements. It will work. I will make money. It go blow. Statements. Investors think in terms of questions. What if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
What if it's not profitable? What if your competitors are a big threat? What if you know blow? They ask questions. And the thing about questions is that a question assumes you don't know. So it keeps you humble. If you're always in question, in a question frame of mind, it keeps you humble because questions mean you don't know. Statements mean full stop. It's definite. I know and I'm telling you. So either I don't need your input or you better listen to me because I'm the top dog in this. I know what I'm talking about. So I like that mixture. For entrepreneurs who have never had that baptism of fire before, I like to watch it from a distance where they just see all those, they just finally realize that all those statements that they're making, they're not facts, they're assumptions. And by the basic nature of an assumption, it has to be
Wow.
challenged. So that is a very, very important point that entrepreneurs need to keep in mind. Anything you are saying about that business you want to start is not a fact. It's an assumption. People will buy. The price is 10,000. People will buy for 10,000 naira. In the first year, I will make 50 million. Those are not facts. Those are assumptions. And assumptions need to be challenged. Assumptions need to be prepared for. Because if it's an assumption, it may not work. What will you do if it doesn't work? So there's an analogy I heard recently. Maybe from Gary Vee or somebody. He said that entrepreneurship is like a contact sport, like boxing or karate. And I agree. Because at some point you get punched. Now, it's not the punches that is the problem. That is not the punch. The punches are not the problem. The problem is, are you expecting a punch? Because how your body behaves when you're expecting a punch is totally different from when you don't even see the punch coming. You don't even know there's a punch coming. You nothing at all. That one will knock you out because it shows up from nowhere. But when you know a punch is coming, there's that mental. You brace up. You brace up mentally to absorb that punch. I would expect that more entrepreneurs come into the game expecting that punches will be thrown. And they will not be the only ones throwing punches. They will receive punches. So if you know that punches are going to come, you have to prepare for the punches. But if you go in there naive, thinking that you are the law and the market will bow to you, you are the kind of person that will receive an uppercut from nowhere. And by the time you wake up, you are in the emergency ward.
Favorite book.
Favorite book. Favorite book. In fact, if I have a favorite book, it has to be here. So a business book is it's a book many people don't know, but it's about negotiations. How you can negotiate everything.
What if I was starting out as a business owner in Africa and I just need to understand, like, what is that book that you think a business person should read? That book.
There are many good ones. There's Lean Startup. There's I learned a lot from 4 Hour Work Week, but it may not apply to many people. Richard Branson's books are very good. They teach simple lessons in a very relatable way. That's why I like it. That's why I like his books. What are for somebody who is like they don't understand this entrepreneurship thing, more like they're starting from scratch. They're even thinking, should I even go into entrepreneurship? My biggest recommendation of all time is Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's the book a small book that was strong enough to turn my mind from engineering to business. That's the book that snapped my mind in my second year.
What book are you currently reading now?
Oversubscribed by Daniel Priestley.
Interesting.
Fantastic book, yeah. It teaches you about more or less how you don't need to chase the entire market. You just need to chase your own market. And then you can determine. So it's a counterintuitive way of looking at competition. When you look at competition, you think all of us are the same. But there's a way I can structure myself. And all of a sudden, people are rushing me and behaving as if other people don't exist. The principle applies in acting, for example. The best paid actors are like the top 1%. But you have very talented actors in the remaining of 99%. Why don't they get noticed? There are people who will only watch a movie if what's his name? The guy that did Top Gun.
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. There are people who, once Tom Cruise is in a movie, they're going to watch it. So it's not about which film house produced the movie or whatever. They are going to watch the movie because of Tom Cruise. So that's how creating your market on your own merits, not because somebody wants to buy and they're like, okay, where should I go and buy? So there's an element of branding in it. There's an element of positioning. There's a lot of strategy involved. So yes, that's the book. I'm reading it. I'm not rushing it. So when I feel I'm reading it too fast, I just close it and keep it because I don't want the end to come very fast, but I also want to know what is in the end. So,
all right.
Yes.